Y'all, sorry about that. Got locked out of all my city accounts. So I was trying to get secondary authentication to work. Give me just a second here. There we go. Okay. Jumping right in. Thanks everyone for being here. I think I do. Let me double check. We have quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. Cool beans. In that case, welcome everyone. And I see we have at least one member of the public with us this evening. And we'll just kick off first with a reading of our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the Arapaho, Ute, and Cheyenne tribes, the traditional custodians of the land on which the Police Oversight Panel and the Polder Police Department operate, and we pay our respects to their elders, past and present. And so I want to, checking in really quick, who on city side will monitor the Q&A this evening? Amy Kane used to do that for us.
I can do it, Daniel.
Thanks so much. So for any members of the public, if you have questions, you can drop those in the Q&A. Of course, we will have public comment at the end of tonight's meeting, as we always do. And as a reminder for panelists, if you have any comments, please make sure to share those verbally through the meeting. We only want to use the chat. If you need to do a one-on-one communication with me or someone else in the room, that's fine. But no group communications in the chat of the meeting. And then we will rely on our city staff to help support any brief comments or questions that may come in through the Q&A, while of course referring any bigger questions or comments to the public comment at the end of this meeting. Boom, boom. And so I'd like to remind members of the community that they can learn more about police oversight and this panel at our website, which is bouldercolorado.gov/services/police-oversight. You can also reach the panel through our general panel email, policeoversight_panel@bouldercolorado.gov. That email address is monitored by myself and our other co-chair, Hadassah. And any communications that come to the two of us through that email, we share with the full panel, unless, of course, it's spam or something we can quickly answer on our own, but we do forward those on to the panel generally. I will read through this evening's agenda, and panelists, just buckle in. We are back to full meetings, so this will be another long meeting. And for those of you who haven't had a long meeting with us yet, we will take a break at least every hour. So we'll have a break at 7:30, so we can have a little time to be humans, grab snacks, and do what we need to do to come back and pay full attention. So for tonight's meeting, September 13th, 2023, we'll start with an approval of the August 9th meeting minutes. And then we're going to introduce our new monitor, Sherry. And we'll actually go around panelists. That'll be a good opportunity for us to introduce ourselves to Sherry and again to the public. It's always good to reintroduce ourselves to the public every once in a while. So just be thinking through, a brief introduction of who you are, what brings you to police oversight, and because we'll do a little round robin there. Then we'll go through the committees and just see if there are any updates from any of the committee members. We will get the independent police monitors report. And then the big agenda item for this evening, we'll be getting our update from the consultant on the police oversight ordinance discussion. We'll have a discussion and a Q&A related to that. And Farah is going to go through the timeline, give a presentation on the ordinance changes, and then give us an update on next steps in that process. And then after that, we will turn it over to public comment. And I'm going to pause there for just a second to check panelists if there's anything you would like to add to the agenda for this evening. And if something comes up, feel free to chat me as well. But with that, we will go ahead and move through the agenda.
I did want to add something,
Yeah.
just something about the selection or the trying to get alternates for alternates. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, let me make a note to myself. I'll give a, Victor, I'll give a brief update on that during the committee updates, because we have talked about that. I'm just making sure I don't forget. There we go. Okay, cool. In that case, panelists, any questions or additions to the meeting minutes from our August meeting? Just give us a second. Cool beans. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes? Anyone? Thanks, Abe. Motion to approve. Could I get a second on that? Thanks, Chico. I see it. And Jason, if I could get you on camera, it's important that we're on camera when we take a vote on anything, just to make clear we are who we are. Thanks so much, Jason. A quick show of hands then, all in favor of approving the minutes. Thank you very much. Approved. Boom, boom, boom. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sherry to introduce. Well, I'll just actually go ahead and kick it off. I want to welcome Sherry to the police oversight panel as independent monitor under our current ordinance. Sherry, as independent monitor, is a non-voting member of this panel, much like Sterling is as well. And so I want to welcome Sherry. And of course, it was a rigorous application process. We went through it twice just to make sure we got it right? And for those of you who didn't know, Adasa and I did serve on a community panel along with Teresa from the OIR group, and with Taisha, a previous member of the panel. We were part of the community group that interviewed the candidates, interviewed Sherry, spent the day in Boulder with us, interviewing with all sorts of people in our community before their final appointment. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Sherry to introduce herself to all of you.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm glad you brought up those memories now. Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited and honored to be here. You know, you all know the same thing, that the job posting went up in May. So it feels like it's been a very long time from when I saw this job posting in early May to actually, you know, being here in front of you. And in the meantime, I've sort of been stalking you and watching y'all on camera. So for those of you who don't know, I'm coming from Chicago, where I spent 15 years at COPA, which is the Civilian Office of Police Accountability. And before that, its predecessor agency was IPRA, the Independent Police Review Authority. I started as an investigator. I worked on a lot of domestic violence cases, and that is an entire unit devoted to investigating domestic violence and child abuse and elder abuse allegations against Chicago police officers. I worked as an investigator and then was promoted to supervisor, which I did for over 10 years. And most recently was the director of investigations of our intake unit, which processes over 5,000 complaints of police misconduct annually. In the meantime, I've been on call as an investigator, supervisor, and director, which we respond on scene to officer-involved shootings and officer-involved fatalities. And I've probably been involved with, I'm estimating over 100 of those in the course of my career. I've been through lead homicide training, which is what detectives undergo. I've been through that 3 times. So I have an extensive investigation background when it comes to police misconduct. It's like the bread and butter of my career. And I've handled all types of misconduct allegations: the officer-involved shootings, domestic violence, use of force, and Fourth Amendment and bias-based verbal abuse. it's just what I've lived and breathed for, the last 15 years. And now I've flipped it all upside down and I've come to Boulder, and now I'm like a baby trying to learn everything from scratch because of different state statutes and city ordinances and rules and regulations. So I've just been really trying in these last few weeks since I've been here, of trying to learn the policies and the processes and the people. And every day goes by very quickly, and it's pretty taxing actually, but very exciting to be here. It's really just strange to go from knowing so much and to coming here and realizing I barely even know what I need to know. And then at the end of the day, I ride my bike home, and almost every day has been a new route because I still don't know where I'm going, and I get lost on some of the twists and turns of the paths. So it's been very humbling in a lot of ways. But I'm very much looking forward to, getting to know each of you, both individually and as a group. And we have a lot of activities coming up in the next couple of weeks where hopefully I'll get an opportunity to get to know more of you personally. And just thank you in advance for your patience and grace as I bring myself up to speed in this new role. Speaking about bringing herself up to speed, also, there is Amy McMahon does not just look different. I'd like to introduce Selena. She is on her second week working for the city of Boulder, and she's going to be helping out both myself and the panel, doing all of that very important behind the scenes admin work. So I'd like to introduce Selena right now.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet all of you and see finally a name to a face. So like Sherry said, I hope to meet all of you soon since we have some upcoming events going on. So I hope to meet everyone. And yeah, I just want to thank everyone for the patience. As Sherry said, this is all new to the both of us. So thank you for all your patience. And yeah, I'm excited to help you and every single one of you and Sherry. So thank you.
Thanks, Selena. Thanks, Sherry. So yeah, panelists, I'll kick us off introducing ourselves. Of course, Sherry, we've already met. I'm Daniel Leonard. I work for the University of Colorado Boulder, and I've been on the panel for 3 years now. My term is up in February, and I've been the co-chair for over a year now, along with Hadassah is our current co-chair as well, and she's away on a very well-deserved vacation this week, so we're giving her plenty of space as well. And with that, I will hand it over to Chico on my left there to introduce himself.
Well, I've been on the panel. I started out as an alternate, came on board fully fall of 2021, and I helped pay taxes for Lumen Technologies.
AB, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm AB. I'm new to the panel this year. I'm a life coach in Boulder, Colorado, and a ceramicist.
Milan, you want to go next?
Hey everyone, my name is Milan. I use she, her pronouns. I am a newish member, not as new as AB, but certainly newer than Daniel. I've been here since the beginning of this year. And I am a English to French translator and also a core member of Boulder Surge, showing up for racial justice. And in this panel, I'm also involved with the Community Engagement Committee.
Victor, do you want to go next?
Hello, nice to meet you. Nice to see you again, Sherry. My name is Victor King. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm also a founding member of the Police Oversight Panel and the co-chair of the Communications Committee. I'm also involved in the Boulder homeless shelter, and I currently work for Mental Health Partners as a statewide recovery coach manager. And I'll pass it off to Soledad.
Unmuting is always hard, so sorry. Hi everyone, my name is Soledad Diaz. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I live in Boulder, just switching jobs. I'm the new Public Policy Director for Violence Free Colorado, the Domestic Violence Coalition for the state. I'm also a board member for Downtown Boulder, and I have 2 kids going up to CU, one in Fairview, so super involved with the community. Yeah, I'm as new as Milan. I was going to say old, but not new as Milan. And we're also in the community engagement committee and part of the work group that work in the ordinance for the past 100 million weeks. So glad it's so.
Lizzie, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Sherry. It's so nice to meet you. I'm Lizzie Friend. I use she, her pronouns. I'm also a brand new baby on the panel. AB and I came in together just a couple months ago. I think this is meeting 3, maybe. So getting used to the swing of things, but very excited about the work that the panel has been doing here and excited to continue that. In my day job, I work for the City and County of Denver, managing a section of the Department of Public Health and Environment. It's nice to meet you.
Jason, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you. My name's Jason Saville. I use he, him. I am a lawyer in town. I started as a public defender many years ago and did that kind of work for close to 15 years. I still do criminal defense. I also do other things and have practiced in Boulder for about 20 years. And I live in the area, and I am happily surprised at how much I've learned from the folks since January when I started getting involved here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Sterling, would you like to go next?
Hello, my name is Sterling Equo. I'm a detective sergeant at the Boulder Police Department. I've been with the police department here for 20 years.
Thanks, Sterling. And so I know Farrah is going to be introducing herself for most of our meetings, so we can hold there. Flo, Michael, I wondered if you, I know you've worked pretty closely with Sherry, but if you're there, if you just wanted to say hello in a quick introduction, since we do have 2 members of the public on tonight.
Mike, do you want to go first? Okay, I'm Florence Finkel. On behalf of the OIR group, I've been the lead person serving as Boulder's interim. I served as Boulder's interim independent police monitor from the end of for about 11 months. And just so the panelists know, we've been working closely with Sherry and reviewing the complaint process, reviewing the docket. OIR group, or I am going to retain responsibility for some of the cases in process because it doesn't make sense for Sherry to spend her time catching up. And we're hoping that that is completed by the end of the month. There's 2 more case reviews that are already scheduled that I'm going to facilitate. One is tomorrow night, one is next week, and Sherry will be present to learn how that process works. And it's, again, been a pleasure to work with you and learn about Boulder.
And just to tag behind Flo, Michael Giannaco, I'm part of the interim monitoring team, and it's been a great experience working with you all, and I really look forward to transitioning over to Sherry and making sure that this is as seamless as possible. So good to see you all.
And to reiterate something what Flo had said about case reviews. And so for any members of the public, the panel is currently on a temporary moratorium on new business unrelated to the ordinance. And so what Flo is referring to there is to case reviews the panel had already committed to before that moratorium. We've not been taking on new case reviews as we sort out the legal challenges and gaps in the ordinance that were challenging to that work, and we needed to fix those before we resumed case reviews. And so later in this meeting, we'll be getting an update from Farah, our consultant on the ordinance updates, and the hope is, our moratorium ends in October as approved by City Council. And so our hope is to have the ordinance in place by then to smoothly both transition Sherry in, but also transition the panel back onto full panel business, full panel work. And so we are preparing for that now. And to reiterate what Selena and Sherry had said, we are looking for an opportunity, panelists, for us actually to meet as human beings, to put bodies to the blocks, and hopefully that'll be coming up soon. But also trying to figure out how we can also begin doing hybrid meetings as well, so that we can be meeting in person for these meetings while also maintaining an option to connect virtually, either as members of the public or ourselves. We want to maintain that accessibility while also bringing a little bit more of a human element back to our work. We've been, since the start of this panel, we've been exclusively having these meetings virtually because of COVID and all the things. So I really look forward to that as well. In regards to the transition, this is a lot. It's a big transition. So I really would appreciate everyone's attentiveness to our inboxes, and just keeping an eye on how things are going. And if something seems off, or if it seems like I'm dropping the ball, or if somewhere there's a gap we're forgetting we need to cover, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. It's going to take a village for us to get over the finish line with both the ordinance and bringing on our new monitor. So please don't hesitate to reach out. There are no silly questions. To those of you who introduce yourselves as babies on the panel, I don't believe it. You're all brilliant and amazing, as I've already experienced. So please, truly, do not hesitate to jump in. If you see something that we could be doing better, just let us know. Now's the time to get back to work. So with that, why don't we do a quick round on panel committee updates? And so, Victor, to your oops, let me bring up my notes. To your question, so yes, February is when some of our terms of existing panel members are up. And so we are down to one alternate panelist who was appointed by City Council who could fill one of our seats should we complete our term, or, as has happened, life happens, sometimes you just have to step back from the work. And so the challenging part is we have a new ordinance in the works, which also includes some changes to how the process goes for appointing new panelists. And so we've started in our co-chair meetings, which I want to reiterate, those co-chair meetings, you all get invitations to those. Should you ever want to just drop in on those, you are always welcome in those meetings, but you're also not required to be at them. So anytime anything happens at those meetings, Dasa and I will bring that information back to you all. And so in those meetings, we started having that conversation of needing to prepare a recruitment cycle. So time is up for us to begin recruiting again. And to begin selecting new panelists. And so that's going to be dependent on what the new ordinance is, while also recognizing that it's a long process, right? So it took us 4 months last time, and February is right around the corner. And so we're trying to thread that needle. So hopefully the ordinance changes are going to go through smoothly. We're going to be able to launch that recruitment and selection process. And as we recall, the last go around, it was a really challenging selection process. And so we learned a lot from that, from our community, from ourselves, from those in power who make the final decision on who of us will serve on this panel. And so I want to make sure that we are giving it the time, the thought to really do it thoroughly and do it well, to make sure it's smooth for all remaining panelists come February. We don't end up in that situation we were in last time, which was the possibility of losing a quorum on the panel's business. So So that acknowledged, we are working on it. Fingers crossed the ordinance is going to go through easy. But one way or another, yeah, we're going to have to get new alternates and new panelists on board before February. Any questions now about that process? Questions or concerns? I mean, we all, just half the panel just went through it, right? So yeah, cool, great. And if you have any questions afterwards, feel free, of course, to reach out anytime. Give me a call, shoot me an email. Happy to talk more. With that, I'll go ahead. Adasa and I are the remaining members of governance. So I will repeat our record. If anyone would like to join the governance committee, we'd really appreciate that. Part of that is because neither of us we are actually drafting on our bylaws that as co-chairs, neither of us can actually chair the governance committee. We don't want to concentrate power like that. So we are looking for a chair of governance. If you are interested in rules and the like, it would be great to bring you on board. Our work really is going to kick off tonight after this presentation, because we need to now revisit the bylaws in relation to the new ordinance and the changes to the ordinance. And we had several amendments that were already in the work addressing some of the challenges we were facing as a panel. And so we need to get those worked up. And so the hope is, as soon after as possible with the new ordinance, we will be bringing to you all amended bylaws to review, give feedback on, and then approve. And there's some pretty substantial things in there that we'll want to address. So if you want to join in on the fun, shoot me or Adasa an email and we'll get you in. But one way or another, we'll get that work flowing as well. So that's governance. Any questions, comments, concerns about governance? Cool beans. Chico, any updates, legacy?
We're just waiting on the new ordinance, and for now, we're just piggybacking on the community engagement, whatever is going on there. So tag along with them. And for anyone, just those that are interested, I think when the new ordinance comes in place or is in place, it's a good opportunity to join the legacy committee.
Thank you, Chico. Victor, updates on community outreach and engagement?
I'll let Farah give those updates. She's done all that, so and really appreciate all her hard work.
Awesome, thanks. And just double checking, panelists, everyone has found a committee to serve on, correct? Is anyone still searching for their committee? Is there anyone that I can come after hard to join governance is really what I'm asking. Great. All right. We've all found our passions. That's good. Cool beans. Thanks, y'all. And of course, you can serve on multiple committees too, if you're interested. Cool beans. Moving right along then, I'm going to hand it over. Am I handing it over to you, Sherry, or you, Flo, for our monitor?
You're handing it over to me. I'm going to do the presentation. But if there are any questions, they pretty much need to go to Flo because she's the one who's done all the work on these cases. So I will work on sharing my screen. So just bear with me a moment. Are people able to see this? All right. Okay. Okay. So this is the September 2023 Boulder Police Oversight Panel Meeting, Independent Police Monitors Report. In August, there were 5 full case reviews completed, and there was, for full case file reviews completed and pending Boulder Police Department disposition, that's 1. Cases awaiting panel review is 4. 2 of those are scheduled for this week and next week, and 2 are pending the completion of the police department's investigation. Okay, jumping in. For serious misconduct investigation SM2022-007, 2 individuals called 911 regarding an intoxicated man harassing people in front of a 7-Eleven and liquor store. Officer 1 drove past the man who chased after Officer 1's patrol car. When Officer 1 parked, the man had removed his shirt and confronted the officer, yelling at him. Officer 1 drew and aimed his taser at the man and asked the man to relax and sit down, and warned the man that if the man stepped toward Officer 1 would fire his taser at the man. The man took a step towards Officer 1, and Officer 1 fired his taser at the man. The projectile struck the man but was ineffective. Officer 1 fired a second round and the man fell to the ground. Backup officers handcuffed the man. The man filed a complaint, and in addition to complaining about the arrest and use of force, complained that officers did not explain the reason for the arrest, the accuracy of the incident report, and did not provide him with Miranda warnings. The allegations that were served were Officer 1, who is no longer a Boulder Police Department employee, Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, customer service value, did not provide explanation for stop and subsequent arrest. The panel recommendation was exonerated, and the department final determination was also exonerated. Another allegation is Rule 6, use of force, General Order 225. And that allegation, the panel exonerated with a 2-to-1 vote, and the department recommendation, or the department also exonerated the allegation. Rule 1 allegation, compliance with values, rules, and general orders. General Order 200, discretion, arrest standards, and enforcement action, arrest without probable cause. The panel exonerated that again with a 2-to-1 vote, and the department determination was exonerated. Rule 1 allegation, compliance with values, rules, and general orders. GO 240, in-car cameras, body-worn cameras, and personal recording devices turned off body-worn camera for conversation with Officer 2. The panel recommended that that allegation be sustained, and the department determined that it was not sustained. For rule number 1 allegation for Officer 1, it was compliance with values, rules, general orders. General Order 201, report writing, did not prepare an accurate incident report. The panel not sustained that allegation 2-to-1, and the department also not sustained it. For Officer 2, an allegation was a violation of Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders. Customer service value, did not provide explanation for arrest. The panel exonerated, and the department also determined it was exonerated. For the Rule 1 allegation, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 240, in-car cameras, body-worn cameras, and personal recording devices, muted an angled body-worn camera for conversation with Officer 1, that the panel recommended a sustained finding, and the department determined that it was not sustained. For the allegation of violation of Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 405, investigative process, did not provide Miranda warnings. The panel's recommendation was exonerated, and the department determination was also exonerated. For Officer 3, the single allegation was Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO investigative process, did not provide Miranda warnings. The panel exonerated that allegation, and that the department determination was also exonerated. In addition, the panel recommended that because Officer 1 may have avoided using his taser had he more effectively communicated with the man and used additional de-escalation tactics, the Boulder Police Department should revisit its customer service and de-escalation trainings to improve officers' interactions with individuals, especially those whom they perceive to be intoxicated, on drugs, and/or appear to be having a mental health episode. In response to that recommendation, the Boulder Police Department said that it will conduct a tactical review of the incident, which will include a refresher on body-worn camera policy and integrating communications, assessments, and tactics. Moving on to the next serious misconduct investigation, SM 2023-002. A Boulder police trainee did not attend an afternoon class. When the Adams County Police Academy / Flatirons Regional Training Center staff investigated and interviewed the police trainee, one, he twice lied. First, he said he was ill and attended the class except for having to use the bathroom twice and going to his truck to get nausea medication. When pressed, he said he stayed in his truck for 45 minutes during the afternoon because he did not feel well. After leaving this interview, he returned 15 minutes later and told the staff that he did in fact go to his truck that afternoon and stayed in his truck all afternoon, except when he had to use the bathroom. He could not explain why he didn't tell the truth earlier. During the interview, he also admitted that he had, as rumored, watched YouTube and other website videos in class in violation of Academy rules and was watching videos in the bathroom when he had been assigned to cleaning chores. The Academy dismissed the trainee from the Academy. The trainee resigned from the Boulder Police Department several weeks later. The allegations served against this former police trainee were Rule 3, truthfulness, did not provide truthful information to Adams County Police Academy / Flatiron Regional Training Center staff. Rule 8, conduct, did not provide truthful information to Adams County Police Academy / Flatiron Regional Training Center staff. Rule 8, conduct, did not attend class on the afternoon of April 3rd, 2023. Rule 8, conduct, watched non-class related videos during classes. Rule 8, conduct, watched videos on his cellular telephone when he was tasked to conduct cleaning chores. The independent monitor recommended for all of these allegations a sustained do not rehire, and the department determination for all of these allegations was also sustained do not rehire. For misconduct allegation MI 2023-007, according to the complainant who provided a license plate to the Boulder Police Department, an off-duty officer over the course of years violated traffic regulations en route to work at the Boulder Police Department. In his interview, the officer, who was a sergeant, admitted to violating various traffic laws and said that he had started strictly complying with all traffic regulations since the complaint was filed on February 17th, 2023. The allegation against Officer 1 was Rule 2, conformance with laws, traffic regulations. The panel recommended that the allegation be sustained and that supervisory counseling be applied, and the department determination was also sustained supervisory counseling. In addition, the panel expressed concern that by repeatedly and knowingly violating traffic regulations, Officer 1 set a bad example for the officers whom he is responsible for training and managing. The panel recommended that a deputy chief or the chief conduct the supervisory counseling, and the police department reported that the chief herself met with the officer. Misconduct investigation MI 2023-009, summarized as a woman called 911 at 6:13 p.m. to report that she found two children, ages 3 and 1 years old, alone on the sidewalk. The 1-year-old was naked. It was approximately 31 degrees, and the caller took the children to a nearby 7-Eleven, where the staff gave the 1-year-old a shirt. Officers 1 through 3 responded. Officer 2 held the 3-year-old's hand and walked with the child to his home about a block away. The 3-year-old opened the door, and officers 2 and 1 followed him inside. The mother emerged from a back room. She was unaware that her children had left. Officer 2 got a pair of pants for the 1-year-old and walked to get him. The mother asked Officer 1 whether she could go get the 1-year-old. Officer 1 said no, Officer 2 was coming back. Officer 2 returned with the 1-year-old and Officer 3. Officer 1 issued the mother a summons for child abuse, and in explaining why the police needed to document the encounter, Officer 1 commented on the state of the apartment. The mother objected to the officers entering her home, said Officer 1 treated her disrespectfully by commenting on the state of the apartment, and Officer 1 did not allow her to leave her apartment. Allegations served against Officer 1 were Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 130, criminal process, entered an individual's home. Rule 4, respect for others, commented on the state of an individual's apartment. Rule 5, police authority and public trust, detained an individual. The panel recommended exonerated findings for all 3 allegations, And the department also determined that all three of these allegations of Officer 1 were exonerated. Officer 2 received an allegation of Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 130, criminal process, entered an individual's home. Again, the panel recommended exonerated for this allegation, and exonerated was the department's final determination also. Officer 3 received an allegation, Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 130, criminal process, entered an individual's home. And this was recommended as exonerated by the panel, and that was the exonerated was the department's determination also. Case number MI 2023-010 is summarized as Officers 1 and 2 were assigned to investigate an alleged effort to catch a forged $70,000 check, ostensibly drawn from a company's account. The check was made out to a named payee, and the check indicated that someone presented the check to a credit union teller at February 22nd, 2023 at 2:45 p.m. to be deposited into the payee's account. The officers obtained a photograph of the payee, who was a 46-year-old Black man. The officers conducted contacted a credit union security official and provided him with the transaction details, including the payee's description. The security official sent the officers a video which depicted the complainant, which is a complainant witness, not the payee, a 37-year-old Black man who submitted a check for deposit to a teller at 2:44 p.m. The officers identified the complainant witness and questioned him at his workplace the next day. The complaining witness said that he had deposited a check at the credit union the previous day and showed the officers records from his telephone. The officers left and met with the credit union manager. They realized that the security official sent them the incorrect video. The actual suspect was at the bank from 1:30 to 2:40 p.m. Officer 1 called the complaining witness, explained what happened, and apologized. The allegations served against Officer 1 were Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 101, unbiased policing, race. Rule 5, police authority and public trust, pretended to be a customer when contacting the complainant. And Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 305, field interviews, pat-downs, and consent searches, questioned and or detained the complainant. The panel recommended that all three allegations be exonerated, and the department also determined that the three allegations were exonerated. Officer 2 received allegations, Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 101, unbiased policing, race. Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order 305, field interviews, pat-downs, and consent searches, questioned and or detained the complainant. Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders 305, field interviews, pat-downs, and consent searches, search the complainant's wallet. The panel recommended exonerated, and the department determined that the allegations were exonerated also. In addition, the panel recommended that the Boulder Police Department should train its officers when requesting private security footage to obtain a broad time span rather than a narrow one, enabling Boulder Police Department members to make identification decisions rather than relying on private security personnel. The Boulder Police Department wrote that they will conduct a tactical review of current practices. The panel also recommended that the Boulder Police Department should contact the security official and inform him of the error he made. And the response from the department was that the Boulder Police Department has no legal authority to advise private sector employees to be thorough in reviewing video. Although the credit union's management and security team were made aware of this error and provided the correct footage, clearing the complainant. And the third recommendation from the panel was that the Boulder Police Department should consider extending an apology to the complainant in its final correspondence. And the department responded that Officer 1 apologized to the complainant, and the Boulder Police Department's closing letter to the complainant will indicate that the Boulder Police Department regrets that this situation happened. Misconduct investigation MI 2023-016 is summarized by a driver called 911 to complain about an officer's on-duty driving. The driver subsequently specified that Officer 1 sped cut around cars, brake checked the driver, slammed on his brakes at a red light, and had to back up, drove extremely slowly, and did not properly use his blinkers. The Boulder Police Department's automated vehicle locating report, which the traffic unit confirmed was accurate, showed that Officer 1 sped on Canyon Boulevard. The investigation showed that he had no reason to do so. The allegation served to Officer 1 was Rule 2, conformance with law, traffic regulations. The independent monitor recommended that that this allegation against Officer 1 be sustained with a recommendation for supervisory counseling, and the departmental determination was also a sustained allegation with supervisory counseling. For case the number MI 2023-025, it's summarized as a man called 911 to report a group of individuals assaulted him and stole his cell phone. Officer 1 responded and tried to question the caller. Officer 1 interviewed an independent witness who partially corroborated the man's account. She saw 2 men kicking the 911 caller and questioned others at the scene of the assault. A bicyclist dropped the man's phone on the ground as he rode past, but the witnesses could not identify the bicyclist. The caller refused to answer more questions, walked away from Officer 1, and refused to speak with another officer who later encountered him. Police stopped the bicyclist and Officer 1 interviewed him. The bicyclist said he took the phone when the 911 caller and a second man confronted each other. The caller holding a stun gun, as described, and the second man holding a knife, because the bicyclist did not want to be recorded. Officer 1 did not make an arrest. The case was still open a month after the complaint was filed. Allegations leveled against Officer 1 were Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders. General Order 203, investigative responsibility and case assignments, did not conduct an adequate investigation. The independent police monitor recommended that this allegation against Officer 1 be exonerated, and the department also determined that the allegation against Officer 1 should be exonerated. And case number MI 2023-026 is summarized as a mall complex security guard called 911 regarding an unhoused man who would not leave. The guard wanted the individual cited for trespass. Officers 1 and 2 responded. The mall building and walkways had no trespass signs. The officers found the man, told him why they were there, and Officer 1 asked him to leave with his possessions and move on. The man started to gather his belongings, readying to leave. The officers then spoke to the security guard. As the officers walked to their vehicles, a woman approached them and questioned the officers about ordering the man to leave. They explained that the mall was private property. The woman asked for their names. Officer 1 initially pointed to her nameplate. When the woman said she couldn't read the nameplate, Officer 1 stated her name and badge number. When Officer 1 walked to her car, the woman spoke with Officer 2. Officer 2 tried to focus the conversation on the right of the private property owner to ask someone to leave. Officer 2 ended the conversation by telling the woman to have a good day. The woman filed a complaint objecting to the officers forcing the man to leave the shade on a hot day. Officer 1 not properly identifying herself, and Officer 2's alleged rudeness. Allegations served against Officer 1 included Rule 5, police authority and public trust, directed at an individual leaving to leave private property. That allegation was exonerated by the independent police monitor, and the department also determined that that allegation would be exonerated. And another allegation was Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders. Customer service value did not identify herself to an individual. The independent monitor recommended unfounded, and the department also determined that that allegation was unfounded. Officer number 2 was served with a allegation of violation of Rule 4, respect for others. General Order 130, criminal process, did not speak to an individual with fairness and respect. And the independent police monitor recommended unfounded, and the department determination was that the allegation against Officer 2 was also unfounded. And for our final case number, MI 2023-027 is summarized. A neighbor called 911 to report a domestic violence incident involving yelling, screaming, and the presence of a 7-year-old child, whom the caller said was crying. The caller said the woman accused the man of destroying the apartment. The dispatcher could hear yelling. The call notes also indicated that there was a history of domestic violence calls and that the man had yelled, "I want you dead." Officers 1 and 2 responded. A man opened the door, said he was alone, and appeared drunk. The man gave Officer 1 consent to enter the apartment. When Officer 2 followed him inside, the man told them to get out. The apartment was dark, in disarray, messy, and broken property. The officers left, but Officer 2 would not allow the man to close the door. She stuck her foot in the door jamb. Officer 1 told the man he could not close the door. Eventually, the man opened the door and told the officers they could enter. The man's girlfriend and their child were in the downstairs room. The two had argued. He was drunk, screamed, threw stuff everywhere in front of the child, and the woman had taken refuge downstairs. The man complained that Officer 1 has vendettas against him, barged in, and overcharged him. The man filed a complaint more than 18 months after the incident due to his upcoming trial. The allegations served against Officer 1 are Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order 130, criminal process, entered an individual's home. The independent police monitor recommended that this allegation be exonerated, and the department also determined that this allegation be exonerated. Officer 2 received an allegation of a violation of Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders. General Order 130, criminal process, entered an individual's home. The independent police monitor recommended that this allegation be exonerated, and the department also determined that the allegation be exonerated. For the summaries, the August 2023 monthly case statistics involve the number of complaints that the independent police monitor classified as misconduct were 4, serious misconduct 0, community inquiries 0. The independent police monitor observed 6 interviews. The Boulder police investigations that the independent police monitor deemed thorough and complete were 5. And case investigations closed by the Boulder Police Department were 10. And as of August 31st, 2023, the open independent police monitor and the Boulder Police Oversight Panel docket is 15 cases, including those pending Boulder Police Department disposition. And there we are.
Thank you, Sherry. A good short report for your first, right? Thank you. I really appreciate that. And before we go on break real quick, just to finish this out. So panelists, members of the community, just a reminder that under the current ordinance, as a panel, we are charged with reporting these completed cases at our regular meeting. And so we asked the independent monitor to do that for us. And so at this meeting, that's where the independent monitor determines which details of these cases can be discussed and released with the public. And so any information that was not in these case reviews, panelists, that is still confidential information bound by our confidentiality agreement. So just keep that in mind. Excuse me. I also want to acknowledge that we have been working with Flo of OIR Group, and we'll be working with Sherry on this as well to develop a tracking document of all of our policy recommendations, requests for more information from the police department, so that we can keep on top of those and make sure we're getting responses where we need them and getting to review the policies that we suggest should be altered or updated. And so we hope to get that public soon. But of course, it's a big project, right? There's a lot. We've made a lot of recommendations in the last 3 years. And Flo, I saw you just popped on.
Yeah, just to update you, that document is it's pretty up to date. And after the 2 case reviews this month, I will forward it. I mean, Sherry, you've already seen a previous version. Sherry has a previous version, but I'll send you a final version. And what will remain is for the police department to tell you what if, I mean, there are some gaps there, like I couldn't find a response, for example, or proof that they actually did what they said they were going to do. So that will be for the panel and the IPM to sort out with the department.
Thank you, Flo. I appreciate that. Yeah. And so to also just to finish this up is to remind panelists, this is also our opportunity under the current ordinance to include any comments on the handling of complaints, the fairness, thoroughness of investigation, and the reasonable adjudication. So this is our opportunity to offer those thoughts on any of the complaints that Sherry just, complaints and cases, investigations that Sherry just reported out on. And so I'm going to just open that floor up for your comments, and I see it. Chico, go for it.
Well, I may be out of line here, but there was just one of the case reviews that was done by the monitor. It involved, I forget the case number. It involved an officer speeding and not observing road rules or safety concerns. And he only gets supervisory counseling. That doesn't sit well for me, because if it was on the other side, a member of the public, they would have thrown the whole book of laws and regulations on them of what contravened. And somewhat I feel that the officer got away with a pat on the back. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Chico. I appreciate that. Panelists, other thoughts, considerations? Alrighty then. In that case, then it is 7:33. So why don't we go ahead and take our break now? So everyone, if we could come back at it's 7:34 now. So if we could be back at 7:39, we'll resume then. Thanks.
Farah, lady of the hour.
Dun, dun. Panelists, we are back. If you want to
Oh.
come on. And turn on your cameras so we know you're there too.
I'm sitting on my porch, so it's really dark out here, but I'm actually here.
Jason, I feel like increasingly you have more and more dramatic lighting in each of the meetings we have.
Currently, I'm basking in the blue glow of my bug zapper.
It actually looks like you could be in front of a campfire though. Like it
Yeah, I
does
was
not look
thinking.
blue and artificial at all.
Maybe I'll start a fire. It is almost cold enough, and I don't think there's a fire ban right now, right?
There was the sign on, what is that? Broadway said is the yellow. It wasn't red, but it was yellow, but it wasn't green. In the fire station in North Boulder. So
Well,
I thought there were no fires in city limits, or am I wrong?
good question.
then I won't start a fire.
Panelists, come on back, y'all. We got a lot left to do today. Chico, Lizzie, Victor, Soledad, y'all there? Because we also have to demonstrate a quorum before we continue.
I was chewing, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. Eating while on camera is absolutely acceptable for volunteer meetings going from 6 to 9. Yeah. Lizzie, Chico, are y'all there? There's Chico. Thanks, Chico.
Didn't hear that, Daniel, about eating on camera. That's rude.
The world we live in now, you know, I guess we're just gonna have to be humans and
Okay.
feed
All right.
ourselves when we need fed.
All right.
Thank you. Well, Matt, we all are back, and with that, Farah, I hope you were doing your vocal exercises and getting a good stretch in, because the rest of the meeting, I'm gonna hand over to you.
Well, thank you, Daniel. Good evening, everybody. Farah Muskinen, consultant to the city. I am so happy to finally be here to talk to you about the proposed changes from the work group to the ordinance. It's a lot. And I want to kind of set the stage and prepare you for the presentation. Obviously, this is going to be, I sent you guys the email earlier today. I'm making the assumption you haven't had a chance to really come through it. So my slide deck is primarily the language that is proposed, and why I'm taking this approach is because I'm making the assumption it's the first time you see it. I want you to see the language as written. So I didn't necessarily want to paraphrase it in the slide deck. I wanted you guys to see what we're actually proposing. I'm not going to read it to you, but I will give you kind of a general summary of what the theme and the intent is through of the language that you're going to be reading on the slides. And then hopefully I can get through it in about 20 minutes, maybe 25, and then have an open conversation about it, you know, answering whatever questions you may have and documenting your questions, because I do want to include them in what I submit to council on September 28th. So that's really kind of to give you a precursor about what we are embarking upon for the next hour or so, including obviously our open conversation. So I am going to hopefully successfully share my screen. Let's see. Okay, can you all see that?
Looks good.
Okay, great. All right, so we will just get started with our agenda today. We're going to start out with a timeline of just basically how we got here. We're going to talk about the Police Oversight Ordinance Work Group, go through the proposed changes. There are a lot of proposed changes, but I tried to focus on what I would consider the most important to the group. talk about next steps, and then end with just an open discussion about, you know, your initial feedback, initial thoughts. But I know you're going to have to sit back, read it, go through the draft. But, you know, having that open conversation today will be really helpful. So I was brought on in February by the city to primarily help with the revisions to the ordinance, also help with the police, the independent police monitor search, and then some other tasks. So it feels good as the kind of the outsider being brought in, that it's all kind of culminating around the same time. I don't know if that was intentional, but I'm glad that it's working out that way. And I spent pretty much March and April meeting one-on-one with panel members, council members, community members, the task force that was initially put together to draft the ordinance, former council members. I spent those first 2 months talking to a lot of people, individuals in the police department, the police union, just a vast array of stakeholders to really get an idea of, you know, the landscape of Boulder, the landscape of how police oversight was brought to Boulder, and then also like how it's been the last, you know, 2.5 years, right? And that was super helpful to just give me a fundamental foundation and understanding of work ahead of us. And so then in June, we put together the police oversight work group, and we had our first meeting June 13th. And then a week later, we had a community event that was coordinated with the community engagement subcommittee to really get feedback from the current ordinance from community members. And I drafted that and shared that with the city and also with the work group. I did a presentation of kind of the status of where we were with the work group for a city council. Hold on one quick second. I need to change this. On July 27th. And then as Soledad alluded, we had our final work group meeting on August 29th. The work group was very clear that they really didn't want to go into September. And so we really kind of buckled down and did our work, and we did finish on time with on August 29th. Shortly thereafter, I submitted the working draft that we had to the city attorney's office and the city manager's office, and that immediately started legal review. And that was completed, I believe, on Monday. And I sent the draft to the panel today, to obviously the work group, because they hadn't seen the updated version in the more formal ordinance format today as well, because we had been working with a Word document. So all of that was sent today, and we are hoping to continue those conversations. So this is just a brief summary of kind of how we got to this point. And then towards the end of the presentation, I will talk about next steps on how we get to the finish line. So essentially, and we had a pretty extensive conversation about this. I can't remember which, it might have been our April panel meeting about the makeup. And the makeup turned out to be fantastic, with 2 current panel members, one who had been on the panel for a while and one newer. And I think those perspectives really brought great insight to the work group. We had a former panel member, a representative from Central Amistad, the NAACP, the city and stayed for 2 hours, and we really kind of rolled up our sleeves. We had really thoughtful conversations and some debates about you know, various areas, and really came together. Our last few meetings, we went through the draft basically page by page, line by line, to make sure it incorporated all the things that we thought needed to be changed or added to the proposed changes. So this is just a quick overview of the changes, because one of the things that I want to make clear to everybody, there's such significant change that it did not make sense to necessarily do a red line of the current ordinance. So we're proposing to do a repeal and replace. And there are there's more additions to the draft than there are kind of removing or changing. So on the left side, you see, well, my left, what was specifically changed is the selection and removal process of the panel members. This is completely different proposed than what is in the current current ordinance. The other change is in the current ordinance, there is a couple sections about the panel evaluating the monitor or the work of the office that has been removed from the current draft. The new sections include a purpose statement. And this was a recommendation that I made to the work group, primarily from my conversations that I had in March and April, because it was pretty clear that there was diversity of understanding and perception about the role of the panel and what they do. And so establishing a purpose statement right in the beginning of the draft really sets the stage and the foundation about what civilian oversight is and its role and its purpose in Boulder. Another big change is the ability for the panel and the monitor to automatically review critical incidents, and that is defined in the proposed draft. We changed the panel qualifications, panel terms. We gave clear authority. This is something that I heard feedback from the community about, making it clear, particularly around the panel's ability to make policy recommendations. I think the panel has always been able to do that, and the panel has done that, but there was clear recommendation from community members about making that clearer, and we did that. We added some specificity about training. We added a section about obligations of the chief of police, and also looking at reviewing the whole totality of the civilian oversight system after 5 years to review it. And then also we addressed outside counsel, which many of you know has been a topic that's come up pretty consistently through community conversations. So here is the exact language of the purpose statement. And I'm just going to pause for a minute here. And primarily, the purpose is the purpose, right? We are setting the stage here of describing what the civilian oversight system for Boulder is, and then specifically describing what the role of the panel is, what the panel is, and making that very clear in ordinance for the public and also for the panel. I can't see you all, so I'm just going to give it a few more seconds and then I'm going to go to the next slide. So I'm hoping that one of the things is I find in my experience with police oversight is managing expectations, particularly with community. A lot of times community thinks that the oversight entity can do more than it can, or the role is different than what it is. And so I felt it was really important to be clear about what the role is, what the scope is, and just making it clear to community. So another big change is the appointment of panel members. There's a recommendation that the appointment be done by the city manager. And one of the changes, obviously we kept it at 11 members, but we made it very clear that 2 of the 11 positions are for students currently enrolled in the institution of higher education. It is unclear in the current ordinance, and we made it very, very clear in this draft. And so just talking more broadly, that we are recommending that the city manager obviously seek community input in terms of the selection process. There needs to be a public awareness campaign, not only about the vacancies and the opportunity to serve, but also what the role and the responsibilities of the panel are. And then essentially forming an advisory committee. And there is specificity within the draft language about the types of community members that we would want the city manager to seek out to participate in the advisory committee. And particularly having the lens of those most disproportionately negatively impacted by law enforcement and seeking those out for their representation in the appointment process. Also, we felt it was important to include current and former panel members and the monitor. That is a change in this process. Just from my experience as someone who created a system, facilitated a system, and got it from A to Z, like I literally built the system, being I thought that was a gap in the current ordinance, that the monitor wasn't involved, because that is the link and an opportunity to establish a relationship and a rapport that I felt was missing. So we added that. The other thing that you should be aware of is that we felt that those participating in the appointment process on the advisory committee have some sort of meeting or training, it doesn't need to be long, about the fundamentals of civilian oversight, and also understanding what the Boulder civilian oversight system looks like. So we added that as a requirement in the appointment process section. We did change panel member qualifications in terms of looking at requiring ability to relate to community concerns. We added the ability to be fair-minded, objective, and impartial. And I just want to add that particularly with these particular adjectives, there's some combination of these, but it's primarily impartial in pretty much every oversight ordinance out there. And so we felt that it was really important to be clear about that. Also, it was very, very important to the work group members to have a connection to Boulder and a commitment to serving the community. And then we added some additional qualifications in terms of valuing equity, diversity and inclusion, understanding, experience or understanding conflict resolution and mediation. And then we also wanted to make it clear that you're not required to be a US citizen to serve on the panel. We changed panel terms. So as you know, right now, panels serve a max of six years. So three, I think it's 3 and 3, or maybe 4 and 2 are the option. And so what we are proposing is to have a max of a 4-year term. So it would be 3 and 1 or 2 and 2, and that they would be staggered. And then for the students, it would be a 1-year term with a max of 2 years. And that is pretty clear in the language. We thought 4 years was a long enough time to serve and have impact. We thought 6 years was long, but given particularly with the type of work this is, and that it also may cause some difficulty with retention of panel members. Next is panel training. So this takes 2 sections. First section is required training for the panel before a vote can be taken. And this primarily is to give new panel members a solid foundation about what they are embarking upon and what they're going to be doing as panel members and volunteers reviewing allegations of police misconduct. And so we specifically delineated what those trainings should be, and also a primer on the history of civilian oversight and oversight in Boulder, and then really understanding the complaint process and how complaints are investigated. Then on the other side of the screen, you will see what we are proposing as annual training, and that's participation in at least one 4-hour ride along or a 2-hour walk along. And additional training on these various areas, but it's not obviously limited to, but these are some topics that we thought are important and relevant to service on a police oversight panel. And then we also wanted to broaden the scope of who can provide the training. And so again, this is not limited to, but we thought obviously representatives from NACOL or comparable organization, consultants and subject matter experts as opening up the pool of potential trainers or providers of this training. This is a new section, proposed section, and it's essentially creating and setting the framework for the interrelationship between the monitor and the panel. And the first bullet is probably what's most important, is really setting them as separate entities, but complementary. And so obviously they're separate, but working in the same accord, and obviously working in with the same goal of police accountability and community, having a connection to community and being a resource for community input, but also alleviating any sort of tension in terms of that prior kind of reporting and evaluation. We thought this was a better way to pursue oversight in the future in terms of having kind of a level stage with the monitor and the panel. And obviously, I think most of you should know or have known or heard us talk about having the monitor serve as a liaison to the panel and not necessarily a non-voting member. And obviously will be a subject matter expert, particularly when it comes to case review and policies of the police department. And the last bullet is a change. The current ordinance says that the panel will contact the complainant, and generally that is a role of the monitor to do that, by phone or by letter to talk about the status of their complaint, or to send them an update about what the result of their complaint is. That is something that is generally handled by the staff and not the volunteers. So we did change that. And then added, I believe this is a current practice, but we wanted to put in the ordinance that any communication that occurs, that the panel will be copied on the correspondence. So this is another big change, and I think I'm sounding like a broken record because I'm saying everything is a big change, but this is a big change in that we made it very clear in terms of the different areas of panel recommendations. So you will see one section that specifically relates to disposition. And so the first bullet isn't changed, is not a change, but we clarified it a little bit in terms of the panel being able to submit written recommendations about disposition to the chief. And then the second two bullets are additions. If there is a disagreement, that the panel can submit an objection. And obviously, notwithstanding any sort of confidentiality requirements, those objections can be made public, specifically to the disposition. We added greater clarity on policy recommendations, and this is, we made it crystal clear that the panel can make policy recommendations around policies, procedures, practices of the police department. Obviously, having input in terms of those policies that reflect community values. And then in terms of, improving professionalism, safety record, effectiveness, and accountability of the police department. And then obviously that the panel can make recommendations to the chief of police, the city manager, and city council as appropriate. So we are making that very crystal clear in this draft. The next one is also a big change, and I alluded it in the beginning in terms of right now. So for example, I believe there was an officer involved shooting in June, sometime over the summer. And notwithstanding the panel's break, the panel may not have reviewed that officer involved shooting because it would require a complaint. So this particular change removes that requirement. It says automatically on a critical incident, and I put the definition of critical incident, this is taken from the police department general order to be consistent with that. But then we also added language about serious bodily injury because like, for example, if there's a use of taser and someone may have fractured a bone or something, that would fall under the definition of serious bodily injury as defined by the Colorado criminal statute. And those two will now automatically be reviewed by the monitor and the panel. This for me is a big, big change because fundamentally oversight, civilian oversight, historically has started from critical incidents, serious incidents of use of force in communities, right? That need to be reviewed, community, right away, that there was, community concern that brought forth and was the catalyst for civilian oversight. And so needing a complaint to review that, to me, sort of negates or puts into question kind of the purpose of the oversight. And so this makes it very clear. Generally, when you're talking about critical incidents like an officer involved shootings, those generally always involve some level of community concern where community wants to know about that. And so when you have a panel of community members, when you have a subject matter expert as your independent police monitor, those are things, and really the fundamental purpose of why we have oversight, to allow those set of eyes to provide that review. And so now in this proposed draft, we are making that automatic, again, meaning that no complaint is needed for the panel or the monitor to review it. So again, we made it very clear in terms of recommendations for discipline. And this is something new again in conversations that I've had with several stakeholders about, well, what happens when there's a disagreement on discipline? Well, first, historically, you all know that it's rare, but it happens. But when it happens, it's generally on, a serious case or, a big case. And so essentially what we came up with was creating an after action meeting. And essentially at the request of the panel or the chief, a meeting can be requested. And this is in the context of when there is potential serious discipline. So an officer is looking at a transfer, demotion, suspension, or termination. And so again, the chief of police or the panel can request this meeting. We specifically put in a neutral location or, have the ability to agree on a location. We specifically designate who can attend this meeting. And we wanted kind of a balance of equality in these meetings. And then we specifically delineated the purpose, what can be discussed, and the time frame of this meeting. And so this was specifically to address those instances where there's a disagreement on discipline and how they can be addressed going forward. Obligations of the chief. So we wanted to make it clear to here again that the chief of police can appoint a liaison. So changing it from a non-voting member to a liaison, and them having the ability to provide their expertise, particularly on training and policies of the police department. The other three bullets are obviously new additions, that the chief of police will provide written response. Your chief, fortunately, does this, right? I wish I could say that that is common across the country, but it is not. So here we're asking that the chief provide a written response to any formal correspondence from the panel. And we delineate what that is, but it's of course not limited to that. We also asked for a written record when the department declines to implement a recommendation from the panel, and designate that as well, and that it can be made public. And then also same response, provide a written response to any formal written correspondence from the monitor. So essentially the first and third bullet are the same, but obviously one relating to the panel and one related to the monitor. Additional changes, we added a section about the evaluation every 5 years of the entire civilian police oversight system. So obviously we're looking at the monitor side and the panel side. And this is good to just see, to assess the effectiveness, to see what changes potentially may need to be made. And also just, to oversight evolves, right? And it evolves with time. And so this is going to trigger conversations about whether or not, it's time to evolve, what tweaks need to be made, and having that in the ordinance to make it clear that that will happen. The next, again, outside counsel, pretty consistent conversation from community stakeholders. And essentially the panel or monitor can request outside counsel, and that will be primarily done through the city attorney's office. So it makes it clear that it is an option, and it sets forth, the process in which it needs to occur, but at least provides the avenue and opportunity for that request to be made, and it's pretty clear in the draft ordinance. So next steps here. Actually, before we go into next steps, I hope I'm not going over too much time, but I do want to add a couple of points that I did not put in my slide deck, but if I have a couple minutes, I want to just highlight a couple things. One of the things that we talked about, and you will see it in the section of panel terms, vacancies, alternates, and removal. I want to talk about a couple things. One with alternates, because that was brought up, I believe, by Victor early in the conversation. What we are recommending currently, the ordinance allows for we are increasing that to 5 to have a little bit more wiggle room for alternates and also allowing alternates for students. And essentially, rather than doing the, what do you call it? The picking of the numbers, that discretion in terms of the alternates, because they will already be potentially appointed by the city manager. And so they will be in a pool waiting for a vacancy to occur. So when a vacancy occur, giving that discretion to the monitor to be able to make that recommendation to the city manager that this alternate should be, put in this new vacancy. So that takes out the whole kind of drawing the numbers process. The other thing that I want to highlight for you is automatic resignation. And so this is important to you as panel members because this is a big change where this is not included at all, but essentially unexcused absence of 3 consecutive panel meetings. And this is consistent with, this is the exact same language that is in all boards and commissions, their ordinances. That would be automatic resignation. And the next one is failure to participate in 2 assigned case reviews without prior notification to the panel co-chairs or the monitor in a 12-month period. So that I just want to highlight for you. I'm sure you'll see it when you read it. But since we had an additional time, I wanted to highlight that. And the other thing I wanted to highlight, particularly, I think of Chico here in the Legacy Committee, we made some very clear changes in the panel data analysis, review, and reporting in terms of what the panel can review. And we added language about like reports that the police department puts out, that the panel can review those and provide, feedback or input on those. So that is specifically, tied to the work that the Legacy Committee will be doing. So that is pretty high level summary of the changes. Obviously, you are going to want to read it and have additional questions. But again, in terms of next steps, we have our first community event to get feedback, and this is virtual. We talked about trying to provide opportunities to get more feedback. So we thought 2 events would be better, 1 virtual, 1 in person. So Monday, September 18th will be our virtual session. This will be more of kind of an open forum for people to give us their feedback. On the 20th, it's in person. We will have the various sections of the proposed language on poster boards in the room for community members to provide feedback on. And for these 2 events, I will be gathering all the feedback. And in what I submit to council, there will be a community feedback section. And all of that will be collated and put together and given directly to council for their consideration. So I will take every single feedback that I get, put it in the same document and put it in a section for council consideration. All of this combined with some other things that council has asked me to do. Council has asked me to do a comparative analysis with some other cities. Council has asked me to look at the panel's names, what review panels are called across the country. So I will be doing that and submitting all of that on September 28th. Then we are aiming for first reading on October 5th and second reading, and I should have added this, it's second reading and public hearing on October 19th. And then I just added that the moratorium officially ends on October 20th. So that concludes my presentation. Hopefully I didn't talk too fast, but I'm definitely looking forward to having a more open conversation about the draft changes and your feedback. The other thing I wanted to add to is I can't remember off the top of my head the schedule for our subcommittees, but if there are meetings coming up, I'm happy to attend those meetings and talk about the specific language in those meetings as well as opportunities. I think we already had community engagement, but we may have legacy and governance scheduled coming up. Again, I don't know when they are, but I'm happy to attend those meetings to continue on these conversations about the draft ordinance changes. So with that, Danielle, thank you for this opportunity. to present, and I am just really excited for your feedback and to see what you guys think. I really am excited. Oh, well, let me first also thank, lastly, thank Soledad and Hadassah, total MVPs. Like total MVPs in this process. And if they didn't like it, they told me and they said, Farah, go back, try again. And I did. And their fingerprints and thoughts and sweat and tears and everything is in this document. And, you know, there are things where I can go, that's Soledad's sentence. You know what I mean? Like they really provided great input, participated, came prepared, like, and really represented the interests of the panel and the community so well. And it was so pleasant, such a pleasant, wonderful experience working with them and the other community members. I expected it to be a little bit bumpy. When I did this before, it was bumpy. Not saying that this wasn't bumpy, but like, you know, we had our moments, but we came together. And I really feel like the work group should be really proud of this draft, and they really put a lot of work and thought. There was a lot of thoughtfulness and consideration in what's proposed. And so I'm really hoping that you see that in the draft when you have an opportunity to really review it and dig in.
Thanks, Farah. Yeah, thank you, Farah, and to everyone who was on the working group. And I think so for feedback, so running the feedback round, it looks like we only have one member of the community, and I believe that's Amber Carlson of the Daily Camera, who does our regular coverage. And so considering that, if it's okay with everyone, I'd say we go ahead and do 30 minutes of feedback, since it seems like we won't have much public comment this evening. And so to run this, I'm thinking to get as much feedback as we can from as many of us as we can, we'll go ahead and do this one serving at a time, so that we can we'll do one round of questions or feedback that we want to give Farah. And then once everyone has had the opportunity to have their first serving of the meal, we can circle back on second, third, fourth questions, whatever it is. I just want to make sure we don't accidentally, what am I trying to say, shut anyone out of this conversation. And so with that, I will go ahead, if it's okay with you, Farah, I will go ahead and facilitate. If y'all want to raise your hands as you have questions, we'll just go down the list. And then once everyone's had their opportunity, we'll circle back for anyone who has a second questions. So, and Chico right there with the hand. I see it, Chico, go ahead.
Farah, I just want to take you back to the review of critical incidences, because it's a big one, and just for the benefit of the community and to me as well, to just, how are we looking at the process like a 360, just a high level 360 overview of the process? How is that gonna, how are you envisioning the whole process to work?
So that's a great question, and it's a tricky question because the honest answer is it's TBD. So we have to work with the police department. Currently, they don't have a process on how to do that. And I do want to forewarn people that review, particularly of officer-involved shootings, is a very long process. The reason why it's a very long process is because there's generally a criminal investigation, and that always precedes the administrative. So essentially, in my experience, sometimes the oversight agency, we didn't review it until a year later. There are some caveats to that. Generally speaking, your district attorney, I don't know if you have a district attorney or a county attorney, who will review the officer-involved shootings, they have less limitations about confidentiality. And so we would get full-on reports, very detailed 40-page reports that I would be able to share with my panel to be able to review in the interim until the criminal component was resolved, or however it resolved. And so we still have to figure that part out. Our main focus was just putting the authority in the ordinance first and foremost, because right now kind of don't have the authority. So we wanted to just make it very clear you have the authority. But to be very honest and transparent with you, Chico, we have to figure out what the process is going to be. And we also have to manage the expectations about the process because it's not going to be immediate. So it's not like I use the example of I think there was a June officer involved shooting. It's not like the panel would be able to review it in September. It's going to be probably a significant time after that the panel would be able to review it. And in my eyes, what I would like to see is a review that's probably no different than how you do case reviews. So you would be able to see the videos, you would be able to see, you won't be able to see anything from the criminal side, but you would be able to see, you know, what PC, I want to call it IA, Professional Standards Unit review. So that, and those documents. And so fundamentally, we still have to create that process.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Thanks.
See, so I don't see any hands, so I'll raise my hand. I was gonna ferret to the selection process. Is the city manager, in your recommendation, is the city manager obligated to form the advisory committee, or does the city manager have unilateral power to appoint just themselves to, or do they have to form that advisory committee?
Let me look really quick. I'm almost positive that is a shall and not a may.
Okay.
So I think you're asking me whether or not the city manager, it says the city manager shall seek input from the creation of the panel member selection process. So no, yeah, it's a shall.
They are obligated. Perfect.
Mhm.
Okay, good. Thank you. Panelists, other questions, comments, concerns?
I was just gonna say, you know, it looks great. Thinking about all the people, you know, in the room when this was happening, you know, Soledad and Hadassah, but also, you know, the police union, the fact that All-Star was there from, you know, Professional Standards, and also people from the community, right? So it has all the teeth, and I guess my hope is when it's presented to City Council that they don't pick and choose portions of it, but you know, just take it as an entire package. But just thinking about the way this sets up future panels for success, you know, I'm just really glad to see that in there. So nothing but kudos. And I'll dig deeper, but just from what I've just seen, that was some things were unexpected, but just good overall.
Jason, yeah.
I did not get this compliment when I was in college, but a friend of mine did. He got a compliment from in one of our favored English professors, and it was he wrote extended applause. So I always love that. I always thought of it, and I just want to say extended applause. Thank you very much for doing this very difficult work, and I'm so pleased. I'd echo Victor in saying I hope that the council takes this as a whole. I expect there will be some changes of some kind, but I hope that they take it as a whole, and I thank you very much for this work.
Thanks, Jason. Other hands, questions, clarifications? Okay, then we can open that up to serving round two. If there's questions, Chico, Victor, Jason, if you had follow-ups. I'll jump in with a follow-up then. So Farah, with the training, is there anything binding the monitor to respond or provide trainings that the panel requested? And so I'm thinking specifically of the requests the panel has made over the last 3 years to have trainings on the union, collective bargaining, arbitration, the legal trainings we need, to put a point on it, trainings we asked for that then ultimately led to this work stoppage because we never got them. And so I'm wondering if there's any obligation for the monitor to actually provide trainings that this panel requests to conduct its work.
Let's see. So in the subsection, it says the city manager and the monitor shall provide the panel members with additional training, which may include but not limited to, and we list that out. So I think we wanted to list topics, but we didn't, you know what I mean? Like you can't put everything in there, right? So for me, I think that allows for that wiggle room for the city manager or monitor to provide the additional training that, for example, the panel requests. So I would read that to say that that's included in that.
Is the monitor bound to? That's the problem though. So we have this challenge.
It says shall provide the panel members with additional training. So to me, the shall, I would answer that as a yes.
Okay. I might follow up with you just to make that. I mean, this has been a huge problem. So to make sure that it is something the monitor understands, and with the monitor in the room, hi Sherry, so that the monitor, Sherry, understands that, you know, when the panel makes a request, that training has to be provided.
So for example, if you see the top section, which is required training for the panel members before they could take a vote, that includes legal and ethical obligation. You know what I mean? That's the legal training you're talking about. So like panel members have to take that or else they can't take a vote. About police department policies and training, the privacy stuff. So I feel like the trainings that we are kind of mandating pre-vote sounds to me what you're describing. So that's in the first half, is not?
I'm describing the trainings the panel requested to do its work and to understand its work that were never fulfilled. And so that's my concern, is that if we carry over the training language we had in the previous ordinance, which gives the monitor unilateral control over that curriculum per se, if the monitor isn't bound to respond to the panel's requests, like that's been, you know, we never got that training on arbitration. We never got that specific legal training we'd asked for that was pretty critical to our work. And so that's kind of that's the challenge, is giving the panel the power to make sure it gets the trainings it deems necessary to conduct its work.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, let me write that down, Danielle.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. Panelists, other questions? Chico, yeah.
Daniel, on the shall, just adding on to what you're saying, right? If that obligation is not met, wouldn't that come as part of the panel's review of the monitor's performance?
We don't. So that's one.
I answered that. So that section was removed from the draft. So in essence, you know, because now it's very clear that the monitor reports to the city manager. If, for example, you requested training from the monitor that they didn't provide, the recourse for that would be going to the city manager. Because in addition to this draft also puts the responsibility on the city manager. So like, in my mind, it makes it even less likely that the monitor won't provide this, because then it's now put on the city manager to provide it, because the language specifically says city manager and monitor. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, as long as there's that obligation that the panel does have power to determine the training it needs to conduct its work. Because of course those training requests did overlap with the city manager previously, in the city attorney's office and the Boulder Police Department, all under the city manager. So there was, it was a big loophole that we fell through and hit hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page about that, about training. So this, for me, if it needs a tweak, it's a minor tweak, because essentially, like, we want panel members to have the tools that they need to do the job. And so there's probably going to be zero pushback, you know what I mean, on this, but it might just be like a minor tweak to make it clear, because we really wanted to make sure, like, you know, this is, and so that don't be mad at me, but this is where I felt like her input was so helpful as a newer panel members, because like, we don't want panel members to kind of feel like she felt when she came on, right? Like we want them to come on and have the tools and feel supported and really feel like they are in a position to make decisions on votes at their first meeting, right? And so this is, I'm just sharing that as the context of why we put that in there and why it's so kind of explicit. But your tweak that you're asking for is consistent with that thought process. Does
And
that help?
Yeah, because I really appreciate that, because that's one of those things, you know, when the panel first formed, we created that education committee because it was impressed upon us that we would be training each other. And so it is really helpful that to have that flushed out, but then also to maintain that power that if there's something we need to learn, we have access to it. Yeah.
And sorry, so you know.
Sorry, say that again.
Hopefully you're not mad at me, but
No, I'm not. No. Oh my God, no.
No, Soledad. I'm hoping Soledad's out there.
Yeah, Soledad. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to add that we really put a lot of thought into this specific conversation. And if you notice in the version, in the proposed changes, there is kind of a timeline to having the training before voting, and even that has a time frame. So this shouldn't happen, and everyone should be on their toes, basically. That's kind of what we got to.
The other thing that we haven't talked about that's in there that came from the work group is allowing the city manager to give an excused, like if someone needs more time or didn't complete, like the city manager can, it says, may excuse or grant an extension to a panel member for completion of the training. So we left, you know what I mean? That as, because life happens, right? Like, so we left that, we put that in there so that, you know, for if there was something that happened that it didn't cause a negative impact for that panel member.
Questions, comments, panelists? I was going to note too, just so you all know from the governance side, you know, and since we have a member of the press on, in relation to moving the independent monitor away from to a liaison, away from being a member of the panel, part of that also has to overlap with the open meetings law. We've talked about this before, and so as a co-chair representing that viewpoint, that's been prohibitive in some instances where the co-chairs needed to have an urgent meeting or a private meeting with the monitor to effectively conduct our business. Now, at the same time, I, as a member of governance, I want to remind you that one of the things will be coming up if this ordinance is approved is an amendment to our bylaws about the co-chairs disclosing those meetings to the panel. And so we want to maintain transparency in that process while also gaining that ability to have urgent, emergent meetings with Sherry you know, with the monitor, but then also maintaining transparency with y'all. And that goes across the board, that anytime the co-chairs would have a private meeting with anyone in the city, that we would, in a timely, effective and timely manner, keep you all up to date about what's happening in those meetings. So just wanted to address that too. Boom.
I had another question.
Yeah, Victor.
So worst case scenario, right? I always like to plan to be practical. So what if the city council just rejects all of this? Where does this leave us? Do we just move forward and say, well, we tried? Or what happens if they reject everything we propose?
So okay. So we probably have to I would want to know specifically what they don't like, right? And see if I can address those. And I had made a commitment to the work group that if like things went left, we're coming back, right? And everybody was open to coming back. So I would probably get specifically what council does not like or wants to see changed. And I would reach out to the work group and say, hey, we need a meeting. We need to group back. This is the feedback from the council. We need to do a take two. And then, you know, resume our meetings and then kind of seeing what we can fix and do a redraft. That's probably what will happen. And I got 100% commitment from every work group member to come back if something like that were to happen.
That's a perfect answer, so thank you.
I want to iterate too. So we have a role in this as well. Our voices matter a lot in this process. And so I do encourage us all to carefully review this to make sure it's something we want to put our name on, because it's time to put our name on it. We have our city council's phone numbers and email addresses, and we can communicate our support effectively to them as well. And it's important for us to communicate our support at our upcoming community meetings. This is our big opportunity to make sure Farah and the working group have done so much work on this. And so I think a big component of this now is the rest of us now taking this over the finish line to make sure if there's anything lingering that we want addressed, to make sure that happens, and that with no qualms, we go out in the community and make sure the city council knows we want this passed. And so, yeah, so don't hesitate to reach out to city council. We got their emails. We should use them while we can. Returned.
That some of them will reach out to you too, because they're going to want an opinion. So I think it'll go both ways. And if I remember correctly, I haven't looked at it in a week or two, but I believe in what I'm presenting to council, there's a section specifically for panel member feedback. And so I can, put something together, work with, Danielle and Hadassah on what specifically you would want me to include in that. Don't quote me on that because I haven't looked at it in a week or two, but I believe there's a panel feedback section in what I'm supposed to provide the council.
That'd be great, Farah. And I think, and I'm planning, in any other panelists, if you're interested, planning on being at the city council public feedback segments for those meetings as well, to speak up and support as well. So keeping that in. Hello, hands. Sherry, Soledad, and then Lizzie. Sherry first.
Do people anticipate that any city council members will be in attendance at either the virtual or the in-person community event next week?
I don't think so.
I think that would be pretty abnormal. Yeah.
Okay.
That's my own judgment call. I should say that's purely a personal opinion. But I haven't seen city council at those kinds of meetings. Yeah. Soledad?
Yeah, I just want to say that the way that we work in the work group, it was really, and I guess my invitation will be, as you review the proposed changes in detail, it's really, I will invite you all to try to think that this is an ordinance that's going to stay for a while, and it doesn't reflect each person individually. So it's done in a way that it's not us, it's not me, it's not Daniel as a co-chair, it's not the chief of police that we have today, is how this is going to work for not us, for, it's like kind of a subtracting ourselves from the process. So it's a sustainable process in time, and that when we had difficult conversations in the work group really helped to kind of bring us down. This is not about this chief or this, panelist. It's about this chief that can be here this year, next year, in 2 years, and their panel that might be us or might be someone else. So yeah, I just want to throw that invitation out there as you're reviewing the document.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Lizzie?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have specific feedback yet, but I'm really looking forward to going through this more carefully. I just want to say, Farah and the work group, I really appreciate this presentation and all the clearly great amount of time and consideration that went into this. I'm like over here furiously trying to read all these changes, and I like so much of what I'm seeing. So just thank you to all of you who took that on. I'm just curious too, and maybe this is getting ahead of us a little bit, but optimistically, if we assume that this is going to be implemented pretty soon, what does that look like in terms of transitioning to the new ordinance for the existing panel? Are Are we applying new policies right away? I'm just curious with like term limits and training and what that would look like.
So for example, it's relevant to the term. So like, for example, if it is approved on the 19th, then the selection process will be the new selection process that's approved on the 19th. It will not be the old process. So essentially, if it's approved as is, it will then go to the city manager, who will create an advisory committee, and boom, 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 and then that will take that route. Now, more in the weeds, your terms are your terms. So new appointed panelists will have the 4-year max 4 years, right? So it's not retroactive, it's prospective. And so, yeah, so that I hope that answers your question. I know Daniel has put us on notice at least a couple of times that we will have a very specific, probably more detailed training. I don't know if I'll do it. I think he requested legal to do it, on the nuances and the details of the ordinance. So Sherry and I will probably, in anticipation of that, organize that. I imagine it'll probably be sometime in November. So we do it like within 30 days of approval. So that'll be something. It's not in the works now, but it will be, because we just have to get over this hurdle. But you've told us at least 2 or 3 times, Daniel, I've heard you, and we are gonna, you know what I mean? We're definitely gonna do it. It's on the list of things to do for sure. So that you feel, again, this is really more about support and feeling like you are in a position of having the tools that you need to do this job. That is very difficult. So we will definitely do that.
Thanks, Farah. And yeah, and Lizzie, I want to acknowledge too, it is going to be a little bit of a dance here. So our moratorium ends October 20th. And so we need to keep that in mind, that October 21st, our full business, and I should say our full responsibility and accountability to the public resumes. And that's important for any committee chairs holding your committee meetings after that. But before our general meeting, your work resumes October 21st. And so wherever the new ordinance passing happens as well, we need to keep an eye on that. We may resume work before the new ordinance goes into effect. And so it's just to keep an eye on those things. And if you have questions, concerns, of course, reach out to me or Adasa at any time, reach out to Sherry at any time. Aaron, our city attorney, is also always available too. But yeah, to reiterate, I've been insistent. Thank you, Farah and Sherry, for putting up with me about this legal training. We want to do a full, in-depth legal training on the ordinance, especially now that we have Sherry on board too, to be able to engage directly with her in a space where we can ask those questions of our legal counsel and the monitor to make sure we understand our business going forward. But it will be a little dance for potentially a couple of weeks there where things are one thing's passed, something else has happened, but we're still moving along. But you all should be keeping an eye on October 21st date, and keeping in mind too, that's when we will resume reviewing cases and then would resume voting on cases to do a full review on. Yeah, so keep an eye out. It's gonna be a fun couple months. Milan?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that last community meeting, there was no city council members because there was a Boulder Progressive event for future candidates. However, I did go there after our community event, and several of them said that they would have been there had they not been involved with that event with the Boulder Progressive. So I think because of what has happened recently, or this year, it's they're interested in being more involved, and with elections coming as well, I would guess they might show up. I also wanted to say yes to more training. I'm so looking forward to actual trainings in person if possible, and learning more. I really feel the need for that myself. I also want to say thank you, Farah, Soledad, Hadassah, and everybody else who was involved. I really so appreciate the thoughtfulness and intentions you put into this. I really feel them. I'm really grateful for all the work you've put into this. I really don't know how you did it, but it's just amazing to me that we have at first sight such a good and thorough new ordinance and changes. So thank you so very much. It means a lot to us here, or to me as a panelist, but I think it will mean a lot also to our community and the people we are here to serve. So thank you.
Minutes left here. Any other final thoughts, y'all? Questions? Farah, did you have any other final things you wanted to add?
I can just, if there's a couple minutes, I can just give you, we did add a couple things in the, obviously my focus for the presentation today was the panel side, but there were a few changes on the monitor side. We obviously added the critical incident part. We added the giving the monitor the authority to review, to refer any potential misconduct of public concern to the panel. That authority. Also the authority to do audits, and whatever report that comes from the audit would go to the panel for the panel to review and provide feedback. Things there were very, I mean, pretty minor stuff, but wanted to just note that the bigger changes are obviously on the panel side. But I also you know, want to be very open to the panel. Like, when you have an opportunity to sit down and really read it, if a question comes up, please write it down. Don't lose the thought, send me an email, because I really want you guys to feel comfortable. Like, I'm going to, my contract will end and I'll be, you know, in DC chilling, and you guys will be doing the work. So I want you to feel that you're comfortable and really well versed in this ordinance and understand kind of what the sweat and tears went into it. So I really don't want any hesitation with any question, however big or small, because you will be living with this document, and it's really important to the commitment that you made to serve. So for me, it's really important that you understand it and feel confident and comfortable with it. So I just want to encourage you to reach out to me with any question, or if you just want to kind of talk it through. I am 100% available to do that.
Thank you, Farah. We still have a couple more meetings, but gosh, it's been great working with you. You're incredible, and it's been great working with you. Thank you for all of the work you've done. And we'll see you next week for more. Cool. If there aren't any other final thoughts, we will just double check really quick with public comments. So Sherry, yeah.
I just wanted to say I have some name badges on my desk. So none of them say my name, by the way. So when I will really hopefully remember to bring them to the in-person engagement. So any panelists who are there can get their badge. So then you can't hide amongst the crowd, but people can seek you out.
That'd be awesome. Thank you, Sherry. Cool beans. So we'll officially open it up for public comment. And so just for a reminder, we hold public comment at all of our general monthly meetings, even though we don't always have public comment during our committee meetings. Members of the public are offered 2 unimpeded minutes to comment. And if there is an interruption or loss of connection, we will stop stop the clock and make sure they get their full time. We will allow every member to unmute themselves and let us know if they would like to give comment. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and, sorry, lost my screen. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Amber. Thank you. Someone was already ahead of me. Amber, would you like to give public comment this evening?
Thank you. I'm just listening, but I appreciate it.
I figured. Thank you so much for being here, Amber. We really appreciate your coverage and attention to our work.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me.
And with that, any final business, panelists? Or would we all like to get on with our sleepy evening? Thank you all so much for all of your work. I know this has been a wild few months. Thank you for your work on the case reviews. There were a lot this month. Flo and Michael, if we don't see you again, I just want to officially thank the OIR group for all of the work you've done for us and for staying on when we did our second go around with finding a new monitor. It has just been truly, I've learned so much from you, and it has been an honor to work with you on this with your national perspective and your incredible experience. I count myself blessed to have gotten to work with you, and just I think the Boulder community is significantly better for your presence over the last few months. So thank you. And with that, thank you all for being here. Have a lovely evening, and we will see you soon for more fun and adventure.
Thanks, Daniel.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.